Hello, good people, and welcome to today's installment of our Play Posit videos. So, thus far, we have been talking in Unit 8 about personal financial literacy, and we talked about how to earn, how to spend, and now today we are talking about how to pay. So, this particular segment of our lessons is broken into two parts, and this is part one of how to pay. So, when you are paying for anything, any good or any service, there are three major methods of payment. The first one is cash. So, number one on your note sheet should be cash. The second one is a check. And the last one is debit and credit cards. So, cash, check, or card. And we'll discuss the difference between debit and credit cards in a few. All right, so number one, cash. That's pretty self-explanatory. We don't have to write anything in addition to that. Something that is pretty interesting, though, how long is the lifespan of U.S. paper money? A $100 bill can be in what's called circulation, which just means that it's out and about, for about 15 years on average. The average $10 bill only has a lifespan of 4.5 years, $1 bill 5.8, because they are used more frequently than Benjamins are. So a $100 bill could typically be out and about for 15 years before it ends up being too raggedy or has too much wear and tear on it to keep being used as actual money. All right, so if a dollar bill is torn up and gross and nasty, it goes to the bank to die a sudden and painful death. So if you give your nasty, raggedy, torn up bills to the bank, they'll give you nice, fresh, crispy new ones because they're made, if they are unfit and they're gross and nasty, you can't use them. So they get sent to what's called the Federal Reserve and they get shredded up and burned so that no one can use them as counterfeit money. All right, so checks are next. We are going to skip this section and come back to it and practice writing a check together. All right, however, we are going to go ahead and define that a check is a payment for a good or service. I'm going to backtrack just a second and we're going to talk about the parts of a check. So if you look in the top right hand corner, there are 4 digits, 5719. That is the check number. So when you fill out a deposit slip, you have to put the 4-digit check number beside the amount that the check is written for. The date up here obviously is the date that the check is written. This top line, paid to the order of, is where you write the name of the person or the business or whomever you are writing the check to. Okay, this little box over here with the dollar sign is where you put the number amount that you're writing the check for, and this long line right here that ends in the word dollar spelled out is where you physically write out alphabetically what the dollar amount is. So you would write if let's say we're writing a check for $70, you would write 70 SEVENTY dollars, the and sign, and then you would put your change as 0 out of 100 or whatever it is. Your change goes into it as a fraction, and we'll write this together later. Memo is what your check is for, and then this bottom right hand corner is where you sign it. All right, so a check is a form of payment for a good or service that functions in place of cash. Anything that is not cash, so a check or a card, is used in place of cash. Okay, so just a paper payment for a good or service that comes directly out of your bank account. All right, so a side note, what happens if you write the check, however, you don't have enough money in the bank to pay the check? This is called bouncing a check. So if you've bounced a check, this is what you do. So let's say, for example, you're writing a check for $800, but you only have $400 in your bank account. You've done what's called bouncing a check, and then you probably have to pay like a $35 fee or so in order to have the check be processed through the system and processed out so it doesn't get taken out of your account. Don't bounce a check, it's bad for your credit. All right, so where does a check come from? A check doesn't come from you. You don't get to just like trace out rectangles on a piece of paper and be like, you know what, this is a check from me. It has to come from a bank or a credit union. All right, so a bank and a credit union are two places that you can go to keep a bank, gracious, to keep your money. So a bank is a place that is used to store money and transfer money, okay, from one place to another. So you can store money here or anything that has monetary value, or you can transfer money from one place to another or one account to another. All right, a credit union is not the same thing as a bank. I personally bank with the State Employees Credit Union, and it is not the same thing as banking with Southern Bank or Wells Fargo or something like that is not the same. You have to be a member and you must be qualified in order to join, and you typically get better deals and benefits. So, being a part of the State Employees Credit Union means that I am an employee of North Carolina, I am married to an employee of North Carolina, or I am the child or parent of an employee of North Carolina. So, typically, you can only get into the credit union if you are one of those four things. Other than that, you're going to have to find another bank. So you can get better deals and benefits. So if I were to buy a house right now, being a member of the credit union, they would give me a loan for a better rate than another bank would give someone because they do things like that for their members. So they give you deals and benefits. All right. Now, how a bank works is our next thing. So if you look at the diagram at the bottom of your note sheet, we're going to put cash over here on the left. We're going to put goods and services over here on the right, and we're going to put a bank down here at the bottom. Okay, so this first thing, this is how a bank works. So a bank has money, and they loan you money. Okay, these are all the things that you cannot afford by yourself. So if my refrigerator decided to die a sudden and painful death today, I could not buy a refrigerator with the amount of cash I have in my bank account. However, I might have enough to pay it back to the bank over time. So the bank loans you money, and in exchange, you pay back the loan and what's called interest. Another example would be like for my car. I bought a car recently, and I needed the the credit union to loan me a lot of money. So I pay them back the money, but I also pay them a fee for borrowing money, which is called interest. So I don't just get the money and pay it back. I also have to pay a fee on top of that for borrowing. All right, this one is when you put money into the bank to save it. You put money in the bank, but it's not for a payment. It's for you to have for a rainy day. So you put money into the bank to save. And since you are leaving your money in the bank with them and you trust them with your money, this time instead of you having to pay the bank interest, they pay you. Okay? So every month that I have money in my savings account at the State Employees Credit Union, they may pay me back a few cents. All right, they pay me back like maybe 25, 30 cents to keep my money there. They pay me interest. Okay? And then the bank keeps the difference. So let's say that the bank loans out $10 million worth of money and brings back in that same $10 million and also gets $5 million in interest. The bank gets to keep the $5 million. It's not for you to keep if you're paying interest. All right, so now that we talked about checks and where they come from, we're going to transition over into credit cards. All right, credit cards and debit cards are not the same thing. However, they look similar because they're both little pieces of plastic. So when we get into the word credit, there are three different ways to use the word credit. Okay, the first way is a credit to your account, so deposits. All right, so if someone says like, oh, I'll give you a $200 store credit if you want to shop here today. That means that you have $200 that you can put into your account from that store. So a credit to your account is a deposit. So if I deposit $200, that is a $200 credit to my account. The second type is a credit card, right, or a loaned payment for a good or service. So this type of credit is when you're like, you know what, you can give me a credit for loaning me money. So it's a loaned payment for a good or service. When you have a Visa card, the money that you are using when you swipe that card does not belong to you. It belongs to the Visa company, and you have to pay them back plus interest, which is our fee for borrowing money. Okay. And the third thing is your credit score. Now, a lot of people have seen the Credit Karma commercials or freecreditreport.com. You've seen those commercials before, and we're going to kind of dig into what a credit score is. So, a credit score is how worthy you are of a loan. But first, before we get into that, we're going to talk about credit cards themselves. Debit cards and credit cards are not the same thing. All right. A debit card is money that is withdrawn from your account, and it is ready immediately. It is your money. It is ready to go. You have enough in your bank account to cover the whole expense of whatever you're buying. Okay. On the other hand, a credit card is not your money. You borrowed it from Visa, or you borrowed it from MasterCard or American Express, and you have to pay it back with interest. So a debit card is coming from my account. I don't get charged, and I don't have to pay to use this money because it belongs to me. All right, a credit card, so you borrow it from the credit card company and eventually you have to pay it back. You can pay it off in small amounts, but you eventually are going to pay everything back that you owe plus your fee for borrowing money. We're going to cut it off right there, and that is part 1 of how to pay for expenses.